Imagine this, June 25, 1876. Smoke and screams rise above the Little Bighorn River. On a bloodied ridge, General George Custer's lifeless body lies surrounded by the dead. Cheyenne warriors move swiftly, dispatching the last survivors. Suddenly, two Cheyenne women pause. They recognize that face the man who once sat with their chief, swearing peace. One woman pulls a long sewing awl from her pouch, her hand steady, her eyes burning with 8 years of betrayal. "You promised," she whispers. The needle pierces Custer's ear. "Maybe now you'll hear." This is a story of a shattered oath, and the terrible price paid for breaking a sacred trust. A promise etched in ash, a reckoning written in blood. What happens when empires lie and nations rise? The Battle of Little Bighorn wasn't just a fight for land. For the Cheyenne and Lakota, it was justice for treaties burned, for stolen futures, and for a general who gambled with fate and lost. Stay sharp, Nutty Crew. This is history they don't teach in schools. Before we begin, friends, this story carries weight. What you're about to hear contains depictions of violence and cultural trauma. We don't take this lightly. Our goal? To share truths buried beneath textbook myths. By the end of this video, you'll know why 7,000 Lakota and Cheyenne stood united that day, how Crazy Horse outsmarted seasoned cavalry with sacred war rituals, and what really happened when Custer broke his sacred oath to Stone Forehead under a bundle of Cheyenne arrows. But first, let's answer the burning question. Why did an entire nation gather at Little Bighorn in 1876? Was it just about land, or something deeper? Grab your map. This isn't the history you think you know. In the heart of the American wilderness, the discovery of gold in the Black Hills ignited a frenzy capable of burning through any peace treaty, like wildfire through dry grass. These Black Hills, known as Pahasapa, were sacred to the Lakota people, a place of profound spiritual and cultural significance. Yet, none of that mattered to gold seekers, whose eyes glinted with dreams of quick fortune. Almost overnight, the hills were swarmed by miners, each of them hoping to stake a claim in a land promised to the Sioux by the Fort Laramie Treaty of 1868. As white settlers streamed into the region, tensions began to smolder and crackle, inching towards an inevitable explosion. The U.S. government, eager to please its citizens thirsting for gold, began pressuring Native American tribes to relinquish this land. The result? Native communities found themselves increasingly pushed onto reservations, parcels of land that offered little in the way of sustenance or freedom. Their way of life, once rooted in hunting and living in harmony with the rhythm of the land, was being systematically eroded. Among a tangle of broken promises and shattered dreams, there stood a promise made by General George Custer to the Cheyenne Chief Stone Forehead. In the flickering light of a council fire, Custer vowed to uphold peace and friendship during a sacred smoking ceremony. Stone Forehead, wise with the weight of his people's history, offered a message wrapped in prophecy. He warned, "The ashes of our peace pipe will seal your fate if you forsake this vow. Your path will lead to ruin should these embers be ignored." But with each gold nugget unearthed, the weight of Custer's promise grew lighter in his mind. The inevitability of broken treaties loomed ever larger as government and military forces felt they must secure this newfound wealth at any cost. Stone Forehead's words lingered in the air like smoke, a foreshadowing of what was to come. The rush for riches and tension over land rights spiraled, drawing the Lakota, Cheyenne, and other tribes together in unity, a unity forged out of necessity and a refusal to be erased by an unrelenting tide of manifest destiny. Their gathering at Little Bighorn would become a pivotal moment of defiance and a testament to a promise made under sacred skies. The sun rose gently over the sprawling encampment beside the Little Bighorn River, casting a warm, golden hue across the lively scene. The Native American camp was a vibrant mosaic of colors and sounds. a testament to the strength and resilience of the tribes gathered there. Thousands of Lakota, Northern Cheyenne, and Arapaho, driven from their lands and united by a common cause, had come together in what would be one of the largest native gatherings ever witnessed on the plains. Teepees stretched across the valley, their painted symbols telling stories of bravery, spiritual quests, and the eternal cycle of life. Fires crackled softly as women prepared meals, their laughter mixing with the playful shouts of children chasing one another between the lodges. Warriors moved with purpose, some attending to their horses, others quietly sharpening arrows or sitting in groups, speaking in low, serious tones. The air was thick with a mixture of anticipation and unease, an undercurrent of tension that whispered of the storm to come. It was a scene buzzing with life, a tapestry woven with the daily rhythms of a vibrant community. Yet, beneath this surface was a collective awareness, a shared instinct that something was amiss. The elders felt it in their bones, a sensation that crept through the camp like a chill wind rustling the leaves before a storm. The first signs of impending danger came subtly, like distant thunder before the rain. Scouts, brave and vigilant protectors of the camp, returned with unsettling reports of soldiers sighted beyond the hills. Their horses were galloping hard, sweat glistening on their flanks as they delivered news with urgency. Conversations stiffened, and eyes turned to the horizon with a mix of caution and defiance. Within each lodge, families began to prepare. Mothers gathered their children closer, braiding their hair with feathers and whispering words of strength and protection. Warriors, seasoned by years of protection and survival, donned their regalia, readying themselves for what their ancestors had taught them was inevitable, defending their home and way of life from those who sought to take it. The camp became a hive of focused energy. Drummers began a slow, steady rhythm that matched the heartbeats of those gathered, calling on the spirits for guidance and courage. Medicine men and spiritual leaders offered prayers and chants to invoke ancestral power, reinforcing the camp's spirit with ancient rituals of fortitude and unity. Just beyond the camp's edge, the land lay tranquil and deceptive. The prairie grasses swayed softly, masking the approach of the soldiers, advancing with calculated precision. The signs were all there, if one knew how to read them: a flight of startled birds, shadows moving stealthily where none should be, the first glint of sunlight on metal, like a hidden predator revealing its presence, signaled the start of what would become an epic theater of battle. In that charged atmosphere, within heartbeats of conflict, the native camp stood ready, a mosaic of bravery, culture, and undying resolve, waiting to face the advancing storm. The stage was set for a clash of worlds, echoing a struggle that had defined generations. This was a moment when time itself seemed to pause, offering a collective breath before the flames of battle would ignite the pages of history. The drumbeats quickened. Warriors turned east as Crazy Horse emerged from his lodge, bare-chested, streaks of yellow lightning painted across his ribs. His horse, a dappled gray, snorted, hooves pawing dirt. A medicine man pressed a fistful of sacred sage into the warrior's palm. "The spirits ride with you," he murmured. Crazy Horse tucked the herbs into his braid, then closed his eyes. Chanting began, low, guttural, as warriors circled him, their voices rising like a storm. This wasn't just preparation. This was awakening. He leapt onto his horse, in one fluid motion. The brave run began, a blur of muscle and fury. 30 Lakota riders charged straight at the soldiers' line, whooping, rifles raised. But as bullets whizzed past, they wheeled left in unison, a feint. Cavalry horses panicked, breaking formation. Crazy Horse hissed through his teeth. Now, a second wave surged from the west. Cheyenne fighters screaming war cries, slinging arrows into the disarray. Soldiers stumbled, reloading in chaos. Crazy Horse's riders split again, herding the bluecoats like buffalo into a tightening noose. Dust choked the air. Warriors materialized from coulees, from behind rocks, swarming. Up on the hill, Custer's men dug heels into trembling horses. Rifles jammed with grit. A lieutenant yelled orders nobody heard. Lakota marksmen, flat against the earth, picked off stragglers. Women and children, watching from ridges, trilled the high, quivering war cry. Lee-ee-ee, as warriors closed in. Crazy Horse galloped through gunfire, counting coup, touching soldiers with his quirt, unharmed. A Cheyenne elder later said, "He moved like shadow and fire." Soldiers bunched together, firing wildly, but the circle kept shrinking. A teenage warrior, face smeared with crimson clay, clambered up the hill on hands and knees, knife clenched in teeth. Then, silence. A single eagle bone whistle pierced the haze. Every native fighter froze. For 3 heartbeats, the world hung suspended. Then, like a rock slide, they surged up the slope. Custer's last bullet found a warrior's thigh. Seconds later, a war club smashed his temple. The ashes on his boots smoldered briefly before vanishing in the wind. By sundown, the hill belonged to the Crows. No soldiers stirred. Far below, the Little Bighorn glittered, stained pink. Women gathered discarded cavalry coats, sewing them into lodge skin linings. Crazy Horse stood alone on the ridge, sage still tangled in his hair, watching the vultures spiral. Some say he whispered, "Today was a good day to die." Others say he wept. The nation erupted. Newspapers screamed massacre. Cartoons depicted Custer as a martyred saint. Easterners demanded blood. Westerners loaded rifles. Congress funded 2,500 more cavalrymen overnight. The Missouri Republican declared, "Every hostile Indian must be exterminated." General Ranald Mackenzie needed no urging. That winter, his troops raided Cheyenne villages along Wyoming's Powder River. They torched 200 lodges in -30, cold-starving horses, frozen upright, mothers burning moccasin soles to warm babies' hands. His report read, 80 warriors killed. Tribal accounts whispered of 300 elders and children dead in snowbanks. Crazy Horse walked into Fort Robinson on May 6, 1877, gaunt but unbowed. Soldiers honored him with a parade ground cell. When they tried dragging him to a stockade 4 months later, he resisted. Private William Gentles rammed a bayonet into his kidneys. The warrior's last words, "Let me go, my friends. You've killed me enough already." The Black Hills kept bleeding. In 1980, the Supreme Court ruled the seizure illegal, offering $106 million compensation. Lakota elders spat, "We don't sell our grandmother." The money now ballooned to $2 billion, sits untouched in D.C. vaults. Activist Charmaine Whiteface maps sacred sites, bulldozed for uranium mines today, muttering, "Gold then, lithium now. When does it end?" A Cheyenne prophecy endures. The fourth world will die soaked in blood. The fifth? Maybe we learn balance. At Crazy Horse Memorial, dynamite still cracks granite 75 years later. Tourists snap photos of the unfinished mountain. Far away, at Bear Butte, prayer ribbons flutter where Stone Forehead's ashes once fell, still waiting for the circle to close. Let's peel back the layers of this battle's meaning, starting with a truth foreign to most history books. When Crazy Horse painted lightning bolts on his horse that morning, it wasn't decoration. To the Lakota, this was Wawazila spiritual armor. Every warrior sang death songs, not for bravery, but to guide their spirits home. They fought not just against cavalry, but for ancestral law. The Lakota blood revenge principle demanded balance. For every stolen life, a reckoning. And Custer's troopers? Violators of treaties, sworn over sacred pipes. This wasn't war, it was cosmic justice. Now zoom out. What does Little Bighorn teach us? When 9 treaties guaranteeing the Black Hills were shattered for gold, it proved trust can't survive greed. The U.S. got its revenge after 1876. Forced assimilation, boarding schools erasing languages, entire cultures labeled savage for defending home. Yet today, descendants of Little Bighorn's victors are still fighting. The Keystone Pipeline protests. Standing Rock. Every court battle over stolen lands echoes that same question. Chu, Quien, Ho, Hop. Sovereignty or silence. The sacred arrows, Stone Forehead, blessed Custer, would now sit in a Montana museum. But Crazy Horse's unfinished mountain carves a defiant truth into South Dakota's sky. Resistance outlives conquest. As one Oglala elder told me, ghosts of Little Bighorn still ride. They're in every TikTok dance reviving lost traditions. Every teenager speaking fluent Lakota, despite their great-grandparents being beaten for it. The lesson? Break a people's spirit, and they'll rebuild it from ashes. Crush their land, and they'll grow roots deeper than any treaty. History's greatest deception was calling this a last stand. For Native America, it was a first strike in a war still being waged, not with rifles, but resilience. Let's peel back the layers of this battle's meaning, starting with a truth foreign to most history books. When Crazy Horse painted lightning bolts on his horse that morning, it wasn't decoration. To the Lakota, this was Wawazila spiritual armor. Every warrior sang death songs, not for bravery, but to guide their spirits home. They fought not just against cavalry, but for ancestral law. The Lakota blood revenge principle demanded balance. For every stolen life, a reckoning. And Custer's troopers, violators of treaties sworn over sacred pipes. This wasn't war, it was cosmic justice. Now zoom out. What does Little Bighorn teach us? When 9 treaties guaranteeing the Black Hills were shattered for gold, it proved trust can't survive greed. The U.S. got its revenge after 1876. Forced assimilation, boarding schools erasing languages, entire cultures labeled savage for defending home. Yet today, descendants of Little Bighorn's victors are still fighting. The Keystone Pipeline protests. Standing Rock. Every court battle over stolen lands echoes that same question. Chu, Quien, Ho, Hop. Sovereignty or silence. The sacred arrow's Stone Forehead, blessed Custer, would now sit in a Montana museum. But Crazy Horse's unfinished mountain carves a defiant truth into South Dakota's sky. Resistance outlives conquest. As one Oglala elder told me, ghosts of Little Bighorn still ride. They're in every TikTok dance, reviving lost traditions. Every teenager speaking fluent Lakota, despite their great-grandparents being beaten for it. The lesson? Break a people's spirit, and they'll rebuild it from ashes. Crush their land, and they'll grow roots deeper than any treaty. History's greatest deception was calling this a last stand. For Native America, it was a first strike in a war still being waged, not with rifles, but resilience.